I remember her eyes. They were filled with something that didn't belong to a human. Not anger, not pain, but an abyss, a bottomless blackness reflecting the shadows of things that shouldn't exist. But let's start from the beginning. In a small town near Chicago, where everyone knew each other by name, and the church was not just a place of prayer, but the center of life, a girl named Emily Rose lived. She was 22, a university student, but every week she'd come home to her parents, help with chores, and attend Sunday services. She was one of those girls people called bright. Her smile was infectious, her voice was soft, and her eyes were warm, as if the sun itself was reflected in them. But it was her eyes that were the first thing to change. One evening, as she was coming back from her studies, Emily stayed late on campus. Her friends said she was in the library until almost midnight, and then she suddenly started acting strangely, mumbling something incomprehensible, as if arguing with someone invisible. No one thought much of it. After all, everyone gets tired. But a week later, her mother noticed that her daughter would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. Emily said she felt a presence in the room, heard whispers behind the walls, and felt as if someone was sitting by her bed watching her through the darkness. At first, her parents thought it was stress, but soon Emily began to change. Her diary was found months later, black pages covered in shaky handwriting. "They're here. I can't see them, but they're inside. They laugh when I pray. They make me say words I don't know. Tonight I spoke a language I've never learned. Mom is crying and I can't stop. I'm afraid to look in the mirror, afraid I won't see myself." The first real incident happened in class. Emily was sitting in a lecture when she suddenly jumped up and screamed, "He's here! Get him out!" The professor and students tried to calm her, but she screamed louder, her voice changing, becoming low and masculine, completely unlike her own. She fell to the floor and contorted into an unnatural pose, as if her bones were breaking inside her. After that, her parents took her home. Doctors said it was psychosis, but the medications didn't help. On the contrary, she got worse. A priest, Father Moore, came to the Rose home at Emily's mother's request. I read his notes, left for the diocese. When I first saw Emily, she was huddled in the corner of the room. The girl seemed exhausted, her skin pale, with dark circles under her eyes. But as soon as I entered, she raised her head and her gaze, "Lord, help me." I didn't see a person there. Her eyes reflected something ancient, something that hated all living things. And in the same second, she spoke in ancient Greek, a language she couldn't have possibly known. Father Moore decided to perform an exorcism. The night it began was remembered by all the witnesses. Emily was strapped to the bed with restraints so she wouldn't harm herself. The room was filled with the smell of frankincense and candles, but at some point the air became thick and heavy, like in a cave. She laughed. The voice was low and hoarse, as if from underground. "You won't cast us out. There are 7 of them." The priest continued to pray, reading Latin verses. Emily would either arch her back until her spine cracked or fall back, choking on her own saliva. At one point, she opened her mouth and screamed, but the sound was not human. It was something that resembled a beast's roar and the wail of the wind all at once. Her body began to convulse, and her eyes rolled back until only the whites were visible. "Tell me your name," Father Moore shouted. And then, in voices that spoke simultaneously, male, female, and childlike, Emily said, "We are Legion. We are the darkness. We are what was before your God." Witnesses later said the room became so cold that their breath turned to vapor. The windows rattled and the walls seemed to moan. The exorcism lasted for several weeks. Emily would either regain consciousness or disappear behind a wall of madness. She would cry, pray, and beg for help, and a minute later she'd lunge at the priest with screams and curses. At some point, the demons began to use her body to mock the witnesses. One of them said that he heard Emily speak the exact words about his father's death, even though she couldn't have known that. Another claimed that in the darkness he saw her silhouette split in two, as if another shadowy figure was standing next to her. But the most horrible thing happened on the last night. Father Moore said he felt that the outcome would be decided then. Emily had grown weak, she barely ate or slept, and her body was exhausted. And then, silence. She lifted her head and looked directly at the priest. Her eyes were clear again. Her voice was her own. "They are leaving. But not all of them." "Who is staying?" Father Moore asked. She smiled. The smile was not hers. "You." And at that moment the candles went out. The windows flew open, and an icy wind rushed into the room. She screamed with a sound that seemed unreal, and then her body arced like a bow before going limp. When the light was turned back on, she was dead. She was buried 3 days later. Doctors wrote, "Cardiac arrest due to exhaustion," on the death certificate. But the witnesses knew otherwise. Shortly after the funeral, Father Moore shut himself in his home. People said they heard him screaming at night, as if arguing with someone. A month later, he was found dead at the altar. Scratched into the floor with his fingernails was the message, "I kept my promise. I stayed." People in the town still try not to recall this story. But sometimes, in houses near the cemetery where Emily Rose lies, residents complain of whispers at night. And if you walk past her grave at midnight, you can hear a faint female voice whispering, "They haven't left."